Yo, what's going on guys? CultofMush back at it with another video, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at a $650 gaming PC build featuring the RX 470. Now last week when I did a build featuring the GTX 1050 Ti, it was fresh in everyone's mind. A lot of you guys posted comments saying that the RX 470 is just a better option, and I really can't disagree with that, considering right now you can pick up a 470 for around $170, and the kind of 1080p performance this GPU offers is just really insane. I have an RX 470 myself. I have one from XFX. I do have some gameplay on my channel, so you can check that out if you're interested. And yeah, the GPU is just very good, but obviously with the PC, you need some other parts outside of the GPU. We'll talk about the GPU a bit more in a little bit. But as always, I like to get started with the CPU. And the CPU for this build, I decided to pick the Intel Core i5-6500 3.2 GHz quad-core processor. This CPU is around $195, and it's really the best option for a CPU under $200. The 6600K is also something you can look at, but that's around $230, and with that CPU, you'll also need to pick up a CPU cooler. So at the end of it, you'll end up spending like $250, and that's not really something you can go for in a $650 build. The i5-6500 still offers a lot of performance for the price, and even at the stock 3.2 GHz, it's going to perform really well, as long as it's paired up with a decent video card, and obviously the RX 470 is a pretty decent video card. There's also the i5-6400 if you want to save a little bit more money. That's clocked at 2.7 GHz, and it's available for around $170. Personally, I think the i5-6500 is the perfect sweet spot at $195. It's not too expensive, and it fits perfectly in a build like this. For the motherboard, I went with the Gigabyte GA-H170M-D3H Micro ATX LJ1151 motherboard. Now, this is a Micro ATX board, which obviously I know a lot of you guys would prefer a full-sized board, but it's not like you're going to be missing much with a Micro ATX board, and the benefit of this is obviously that it's much cheaper. You can pick this motherboard up for around $85 to $90, which is a pretty good price, and it's still got all the features you need out of a motherboard. 4 RAM slots up to DDR4 2133. It's got RAID support, 2 SATA 6 ports, 2 SATA Express ports, and onboard USB 3 headers. It's got very good reviews on every retailer, and for the price, it's a very good option in this build. Moving on to RAM, nothing too special here. The Kingston HyperX Fury Black 8GB, 2 4GB sticks running at DDR4 2133 memory. This is available for around $45, and it's 8GB of RAM at 2133. Not much more to say about this. 8GB of RAM is still the sweet spot for a gaming PC build, especially at this budget. Getting 16GB of RAM is definitely an option and something you should look at in the future. I just think at $650, 16GB of RAM would eat up about 10% of that budget. A little bit more than that, actually, and I think that's a bit too much to be spending on RAM, at least in this budget. Obviously, if you do want to throw down the extra cash, by all means, grab 16GB, but 8GB is still enough to run all of the latest games. Now, moving on to the SSD, this is one where I was really debating, can I fit an SSD into this budget? And I couldn't. Obviously, an SSD is a very nice perk to have in any PC, but with going with an Intel Core i5-6500 and the video card being kind of expensive, the SSD is something, in my opinion, you just have to forego, at least for the moment. You can still pick up the Western Digital Caviar Blue 1TB, which is $50. It's a terabyte of storage, and the Caviar Blue, I've used this hard drive so many times. I've recommended it to so many of my friends. They've gotten it in their PCs, and it always works very well. Now, I always do prefer having an SSD, at least as a boot drive, because there are times where a mechanical hard drive can fail. It's not like it's this outrageous amount of times that some people portray it as, but an SSD, at least in my experience, they almost never fail, and I just prefer having an OS on there. Still, getting the Caviar Blue standalone is a good option, but again, just like having 16GB of RAM, an SSD is an upgrade that I would really be keeping an eye on, and that's just not for a $650 build. That's any build without an SSD in 2016. I just think an SSD is becoming more and more of something that a lot of people should be looking at, even if you're on a tight budget, because SSDs are very cheap. And you do have the option where if you think you can get by with only 120 or 240 gigabytes of storage, you can forego the mechanical hard drive altogether and just pick up an SSD, because you can pick up a 240GB SSD for around 50 to 60 bucks. That is an option, but I just think for most people, especially if you're building a gaming PC, you need the mass storage. So that's enough talk about the storage. You guys get what I'm coming from, and I'll let you make that decision on your own. Moving on to the video card here, I decided to go with the MSI Radeon RX 470. This is the 4GB model, $170, which is just an insane deal considering the kind of performance an RX 470 offers you. Now, this is primarily used for 1080p gaming. That's if you're picking up an RX 470, you're probably looking to game at 1080p. If you game at a lower resolution, well, then the RX 470 is going to be really, really great, but at a higher resolution, like if you're gaming at 1440p, I wouldn't be recommending that. At 1080p is where this GPU really shines. I've uploaded some Battlefield 1 gameplay, even though that's not the most intensive game in the world. I know that's kind of odd considering it is Battlefield, but it really isn't anymore. The RX 470 really just tears through that game, even at the highest settings. We're talking like 70 frames per second, which just is a great experience, and really the ideal PC gaming experience, and that's being offered to you only for $170. Back in 2011, to get that same kind of experience out of Battlefield 3, well, you'd be spending more than $170 on your GPU. I also played a lot of Deus Ex Mankind Divided on the RX 470, and that worked really well. The latest games on this GPU just perform really well, even at higher settings. Sure, not everything might be 60 FPS, but it's gonna get pretty damn close. We're talking 45 to 55 frames per second on even the higher end games at maxed out or very, very near maxed out settings. And that's just exceptional for the kind of price you're paying for the RX 470 from MSI. Moving on to the power supply, I went with the SeaSonic S12 520 watt 80 plus bronze certified PSU. Nothing too extreme. You're just going for a single GPU solution here. And that's the kind of configuration, especially if you're on a budget, that you're gonna go for. 520 watts is gonna power this build no problem. The 6500 is very power efficient, and the RX 470 as well. And honestly, you'd probably be able to get by with something like a CX 430, but since you do have a little bit of a higher budget, I would say get something better like the SeaSonic S12. It's really good, around $50, and it's a quality power supply for this build. Finally, for the case, I went with the Corsair $200 ATX mid-tower case. This is one of the most popular cases on the market. It comes out pretty cheap at around $55 to $60, and it's got a very sleek look, kind of basic, but in my opinion, this is an ideal case for a budget like this. I don't think it's a good idea to get a side window in a budget like this, since you're not going hard with color configuration. You're just getting the best parts for the best price possible, and colors and aesthetics really fall to the wayside. And a case like this, aesthetically, it looks fine, but more importantly, it's gonna do everything you need it to. And for $55 to $60, it's a very, very good option. So that's gonna wrap up this video, guys. The RX 470 is one hell of a video card, and if you're looking to build a PC this holiday and you're on a tight budget, this is one of the premier video cards that you should be looking at if you're looking to game at 1080p. And considering the type of performance this build is going to offer you at a $650 budget, it's really insane what you can do. I feel like I'm a broken record saying that, but the video cards this generation, for the price they're being offered at, you can get some insane value. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. If you have a request for a future video, you can leave it in the comments section down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.